In the dusty landscape of London, Texas during the 1930s, a simple walk turned into a perplexing discovery. A man and a woman, Max and Emma Hahn, noticed a strange rock nodule lying partially submerged in a creek. What caught their eye was not just the rock itself, but a piece of wood mysteriously protruding from its surface. The wood seemed impossibly fused with the stone, as if it had grown there, defying all geological explanation. Intrigued by this anomaly, they decided to take the strange object home, unaware of the controversy it would soon ignite. The rock was unusually heavy, its smooth, weathered surface hinting at a long and dormant history buried deep within the earth. For nearly a decade, the rock sat as a simple curiosity, a peculiar doorstop in the Hahn family home. But curiosity eventually got the better of them. What secret was this strange stone so determined to keep hidden? The family decided it was time to uncover the truth. They brought out a hammer and a chisel to break it open. With a sharp crack, the concretion split apart, revealing an impossible object nestled perfectly within its stony confines. As the pieces of rock fell away, the object inside was exposed to the light for the first time in ages. It was a hammer, an old, iron-headed hammer, its form unmistakably a tool of human hands. The wooden handle, the same piece they had seen from the outside, was still attached, though strangely altered. Parts of the handle appeared to have turned to coal, while the core remained strangely like fresh wood. The hammerhead itself was made of a high-quality iron, showing very little sign of rust despite its long entombment. How could a man-made tool, a relatively modern-looking hammer, be found inside a solid piece of ancient rock? The discovery was baffling. It seemed to challenge the very foundations of geology and human history as we know them. The rock from which it was extracted was claimed to be from a stratum dating back hundreds of millions of years. This would mean the hammer was an out-of-place artifact, an object existing in a time period where it shouldn't. The story of the London hammer began to spread, capturing the imagination of believers and skeptics alike. The initial claims surrounding the hammer were nothing short of extraordinary. The rock was the key to the mystery. Geologists identified the rock formation in the London, Texas area as belonging to the Ordovician period. This geological period dates back roughly 400 to 500 million years, long before the dinosaurs, let alone humans. If the hammer was truly encased within this rock as it formed, it would have to be of the same incredible age. This idea was championed by some creationists who saw the hammer as definitive proof against the established geological timescale. They argued it showed that rock layers could form rapidly, not over millions of years, fitting a much younger Earth model. The hammer became a poster child for evidence that humanity was far more ancient than mainstream science admitted. The artifact's owner, Carl Baugh, who purchased it in the 1980s, promoted it heavily as such. Tests were supposedly conducted, claiming the hammer's metal was of a unique composition, impossible for modern metallurgy. But as we peel back the layers of myth, a very different and far more scientific story begins to emerge. Mainstream science did not ignore the London hammer. Instead, it approached the claims with rigorous, evidence-based skepticism. The first point of scrutiny was the hammer itself. Its design was not ancient or alien, it was distinctly familiar. Experts in historical tools quickly identified it as a common type of miner's or carpenter's hammer from the 19th century. This immediately cast doubt on the 400 million years old theory. The next step was to analyze its composition. Despite being held in a private museum, some independent analysis was eventually performed on the artifact. Testing at the Battelle laboratory revealed the head was composed of 96.6% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur. This composition is not mysterious or ancient. The high chlorine content is actually a clue to its modern origin. Modern iron smelting processes can introduce impurities like chlorine, which would not be present in an ancient, naturally formed iron meteorite. So, the hammer was modern. But what about the rock? How could a 19th century tool get inside ancient stone? The answer lies not in rewriting history, but in understanding a fascinating and surprisingly rapid geological process. The key misunderstanding was the nature of the rock itself. It wasn't a piece of the Ordovician bedrock. The object was a concretion, a hard, compact mass of sedimentary rock formed by the precipitation of mineral cement. Concretions form around a nucleus, which can be anything: a fossil, a pebble, or in this case, a lost tool. Minerals in the groundwater, often calcium carbonate, precipitate out of the solution and harden around the object. Crucially, this process can be surprisingly fast, occurring over decades or centuries, not millions of years. The chemicals in the iron hammerhead would have actually accelerated this process, acting as a catalyst. So, the concretion formed around the 19th century hammer, using minerals from the much older Ordovician sediment. The rock isn't 400 million years old, it's made of material that is 400 million years old, a critical distinction. This explains how a modern object can be found inside what appears to be an ancient stone. No laws of geology were broken. History remains intact. The mystery had a perfectly natural explanation. So, let's piece together the most likely story of the London hammer based on all the scientific evidence. Our story begins not millions of years ago, but in the late 1800s in the same region of Texas. A miner working in the area is using his hammer. It's a common tool, essential for his work. Perhaps he's breaking rocks near a creek or a muddy wash, a place rich in dissolved minerals. Through a simple accident, he drops his hammer. It falls from his grasp and lands in the soft, wet mud. Unable or unwilling to retrieve it, he leaves it behind. The hammer is quickly swallowed by the sediment. Over the following decades, the process of concretion begins, with minerals from the ancient limestone cementing around the tool. Layer by layer, the rock hardens, perfectly encasing the hammer in a stony tomb of its own making. Then, in 1936, erosion brings the concretion back to the surface, where it's found by the Hahn couple. This scenario fits all the evidence: the 19th century hammer, the chemical composition, and the geology of concretions. Proponents of the hammer's ancient origin often point to a few lingering questions as proof of its mystery. One is the condition of the wooden handle. Why was it partially coalified and not simply rotted away? The anaerobic, oxygen-free environment inside the forming concretion would prevent normal decay by bacteria and fungi. Instead, over time, organic material under pressure and surrounded by minerals can undergo processes like carbonization or petrification. This explains the handle's unusual state perfectly, without needing millions of years for the process to occur. Another claim is the unique purity of the iron, supposedly unachievable by modern methods. This is simply not true. The metal composition, including its impurities, is entirely consistent with iron smelted using 19th century techniques. The lack of significant rust is also explainable. The concretion sealed the iron away from oxygen, the primary cause of corrosion. Since its removal from the rock, a small nick made in the head has, in fact, begun to rust normally. Every supposed anomaly of the London hammer has a rational, scientific explanation rooted in known chemistry and geology. The London hammer might seem like a one-of-a-kind anomaly, but the phenomenon of rapid concretion is well documented. Scientists and hobbyists have found numerous examples of modern objects encased in these fast-forming rocks. Consider the Coso artifact, a 1920s-era spark plug found inside a geode-like concretion in the 1960s. Initially claimed to be 500,000 years old, it was later identified as a champion spark plug from the early 20th century. Another example is the discovery of World War II-era artifacts encased in rock on the coast of the Pacific. These objects, known to be only a few decades old, were found inside hard, solid rock formed by the same process. Even something as simple as a modern beer bottle can become the nucleus for a concretion in the right environment. These examples demonstrate that rock formation is not always a slow, million-year process. Sometimes, it happens within a human lifetime. The London hammer isn't evidence of ancient astronauts or a flaw in geology. It's just a great example of a concretion. Understanding this context is key to separating incredible geological facts from sensational, unsupported fiction. If the science is so clear, why does the London hammer persist as a symbol of ancient mystery? The answer lies in human psychology and our fascination with the unknown and the unexplained. Out-of-place artifacts, or ooparts, tap into our desire to believe there's a secret history of the world. They suggest that our ancestors were more advanced, or that we are not the first intelligent life on this planet. These stories are exciting. They feel more romantic than the slow, methodical process of scientific discovery. They also appeal to a sense of rebellion against established authority and mainstream thinking, a very human trait. For some, these artifacts are also tied to deeply held religious or spiritual beliefs about the history of the Earth. Confirmation bias plays a huge role. We tend to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. So, when presented with two stories, a lost miner's tool or an ancient civilization's hammer, many will choose the more captivating tale. The London hammer, therefore, is as much a lesson in human psychology as it is in geology. In the end, the London hammer is not a relic from a 400 million-year-old civilization. The evidence is clear. It is a 19th century miner's tool, lost to the mud and encased in a rapidly formed rock concretion. It doesn't rewrite human history or disprove the geological timescale. In fact, it reinforces our understanding of it. But does that make it uninteresting? Absolutely not. The truth is often more fascinating than the fiction. It's a perfect example of how our planet can create natural wonders that seem, at first glance, completely impossible. It teaches us about the importance of critical thinking and asking the right questions when faced with extraordinary claims. We shouldn't dismiss such finds, but rather embrace them as opportunities to learn and apply the scientific method. The story of the London Hammer is a testament to how geology can create compelling puzzles right under our feet. It's a lost tool that found a new purpose, not for building houses, but for building knowledge and sparking curiosity. A mystery solved, but a wonderful story that reminds us that there is always something new to discover about our world.